Mayor. I'm just going to go with being the Director of Athletics and Jeff Mitchell. It is my pleasure to be here with you today. I don't know, because this is a reporting class, if you need for me to spell my name, but it's JEFFMITCHELL. Okay, yeah, all right, very good. So, I am here at your disposal, happy to answer questions that you have, and you guys can fire away. Yes?
Yeah, Rowan Elbert, I'm a freshman in SportsLink. I wanted to ask you, first off, had a big hire with Coach Juranovic. What was the hiring process like?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, I look through 3 windows when I hire coaches, primarily. I look through these same windows when I hire staff, but particularly with head coaches. The first window is competence, okay? And I'll explain more about the details of the search, but just to give you a framework, the first thing I'm looking for is somebody that knows the ins and outs of his or her particular sport. So, with the question being specific to football, we'll use football as the talking point today. Excuse me. I wanted somebody that knows X's and O's, that knows how to game plan, knows how to practice plan, knows how to watch film, knows how to teach it, knows how to break down every aspect of all the operational, day-to-day ongoings of the program. Somebody that's just intimately familiar with running a Division I football program. The second window is connectedness. Okay? So I'm looking through this window to see if an individual can be as connected as possible with his staff. Can this person hire a staff? Can this person recruit? Does he have contacts throughout the country so that we can attract the best quality students to Ball State? Does this person have the ability to work collaboratively with other coaches on our campus, with other administrators on campus, with faculty, with staff across campus? Can this person work well with members of the community? Can they be engaging and connected? That's the second window. And the third window is somebody who's competitive. So if I were to invite this candidate to play a game of ping pong or whatever the case may be, I want to win, but I want that person to want to win too. Does that make sense? So as silly as that is, the reality is, as you question candidates, as you go through this process, you can tell pretty quickly whether they're competent, whether they're connected, and whether they're competitive. You would think that a serious candidate would be all 3. Okay? And I don't doubt the fact for a second that most of the people that you would interview are competitive. All right? It's hard to be in this business and not be competitive. But the other 2 windows are really critical. So somebody can act competent, can portray themselves as being competent, but you really have to dig. And you really have to ask really critical, pointed questions to get to the root of how competent they are. And then the second window again is connectedness. And you can really feel from the interview process how connected they are. So this process, we backtrack to December, really began in late November. The college football landscape has changed so much over the last several years, and to be able to allow yourself the opportunity to do a thoughtful and thorough search, which was what I wanted to do, we decided to make a little bit of a shift towards the end of the year and begin our search process early. So I engaged with a search firm. That search firm was Collegiate Sports Associates, led by a gentleman by the name of Drew Turner, and I began to collaborate with Drew, collecting candidates. People would reach out to me. My cell phone was active during that time. I was probably the most popular person for the most part, certainly in Muncie, but perhaps in Indiana, just all and I say that tongue in cheek, but my phone was blowing up. There was text messages, phone calls, people reaching out to the office, emails. People would get my phone number, not call, but text. I mean, it was crazy. And they were also contacting the search firm because word was getting out that we were utilizing a search firm. So multiple calls a day between Drew and me to talk about our candidate pool. They have this platform where I could go in and look candidates is I was providing information to the search firm as the search firm was collecting information that was coming into them. And I could see in real time that candidate pool as it was being populated. I had some names that I was interested in, obviously put that in the candidate pool, and then began to review the information that they were collecting. Those search firms, those jobs, what they do, they do this all the time, right? So they, at a click of a button, they can pull out a profile of a coach. So Mike Durovich, who was our successful candidate, his profile was already ready, and they could put him in, so I could click on his name, boom, see where he's been, see what he's done, see his resume, and of course, I did other research as well on my own. But we had, it was just shy of 50 qualified candidates. And what I mean by that is a coach that, in my mind, had at least some Division I experience, didn't have to be a head coach, but had some college coaching experience at the Division I level. They were either experienced as a coordinator or were at a higher level, professional or otherwise, as a position coach for multiple years. Okay, we also had some candidates that had not really coached college football, that all that do the job. It's hard to get past a resume that doesn't have a lot of coaching experience on there, so those get checked off pretty quickly. But just shy of 50 legitimate candidates. We culled that to about 15. Then I did 12 virtual calls with candidates that I thought would be a good fit at Ball State. And that list got narrowed down to 5, and then to 3, and then to 1. Okay. Had virtual calls, had phone calls, and then met in person, as it just the way that our process played out, met in person a couple of times with Coach Ramovich, and then offered the job. It took 18 days, by the way, from start to finish. Yes.
Casey Alexander, can you speak a little more on the decision to remove former head coach Mike New 2 weeks before the season ended?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, the landscape of college sports is changing by the day. College football is, we've seen over the last couple of years, the importance of having a head coach in place by the time that National Signing Day occurs, which this year was November the 4th, I think, whatever that, there's a Wednesday in that first week of November, whatever that date was. So forgive me if I'm off by a day or two. It was really important for me to have somebody named by that date. I did not publicly state that because I didn't, quite frankly, didn't want to be held accountable to it. That was just my own internal clock, because I thought it was critical that we have somebody by that point. Which, to answer your question, means in order for me to do a thoughtful, thorough search, okay, I had to have time to do it. And if I'd waited to the end of the season, we were out of bowl consideration. The collective front that goes into making decisions like that decided that it was in the best interest of the institution to do it at that time and to allow for this runway so that we could do a thoughtful, thorough search. Had we waited, I'm not convinced that we could have done that thoughtful, thorough search in a matter of days. It would have been difficult to do that. And I also didn't want to begin conducting a search without having made a formal decision and declaration about what we're doing, if that makes sense. That seems unethical to me to engage in something while somebody continues to be. Yes, sir.
Bud, freshman Sportslink. We talk about how a lot of head coaches have trouble building a culture with the transfer portal being so rampant today. How difficult is that for an athletic director?
That's a great question. I thought you were going in a different direction. I was going to talk about that coach's perspective, then the twist. It's difficult. Look, I want our student athletes, no different than students in this room, to have an enriching Ball State experience. Whatever that looks like, it's different for each of you, but that's important to me. And so whether we have it for or whether a student has it for 4 years and completes his or her eligibility, or whether it's one semester and one season. Okay, my job, what I want our staff and our coaches to create is this experience that is enriching for the student athlete for however long that they get to have the privilege of being here. I think that culture resonates through the department. We have to be nimble, we have to be fluid in what that looks like. We have to accept that intercollegiate athletics continues to change. If we try to dig our heels in and say, hey, no, we're immune from the change, or we don't like this change, it is the minute that we begin to not be creative to provide this experience to our students. But if we adjust to it, you don't have to necessarily accept it, right? But you have to adjust to the changing times so that we can continue to provide for our students, because that's where it starts for me, is that student athlete experience. And then we put things around them to help them be successful. Okay, so from a culture standpoint, I think it kind of really starts there, and then we build and adjust as other things impact our current situation. But it is a challenge. It's not easy. It's a daily conversation, and it does, quite frankly, impact decisions that we make in terms of how we're advancing the department, how we're making it better, how we market, how we fundraise, decisions about buildings to build, if that's as important as perhaps reserving some dollars to pay athletes, and that's coming now, right? It's part of it. What that looks like here, I don't know the answer to that question today. So if I get more questions about it, I'm gonna say I don't know yet, but that's the honest truth to that. We're going through that process. But at the end of the day, we're still mission driven in terms of providing a platform for these students to receive an education, to earn an education, to live it. I mean, that's going to be part of that experience. And the minute that it doesn't is when we've completely lost our way in higher education. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Yes, sir.
Alex Jackson Jr. To actually pivot to the men's golf team, they obviously won their first MAC championship since 1986 last year. What's the process with you and Mike Fleck to get that team back on the mat?
Well, I can't take any credit for it. I think that is a function of Coach Fleck and the caliber of coach that he is. College golf is pretty competitive. There's not, you've got small teams. Any of you that have played golf know that there's not a lot of consistency in the sport, right? You go out and you play great, and you think you're awesome, and you go out the next day and you don't even hit the ball, right? That's my lot in life anyway. But Coach Fleck has 26 years being the head coach here, has had great teams. It's been a while since they've been able to win it. I think part of his success of late anyway, despite not winning a championship till last year, is that team culture that he's built. And he's got quality young men that come in that enjoy being at Ball State, that enjoy the style of coaching that Mike has, that enjoy the opportunities for competition that we afford our student athletes, and putting them in situations to be competitive. I'm a big believer of practicing being competitive, because when you're competing, that's really when you need to be your most competitive. If you don't practice it, it's hard to replicate it. He does a great job of that. I think a lot of our coaches do. And so I'm not surprised at all that he won this year. I mean, he called it. But before the season said, I think we've got a real chance. And I think they've got another real chance this year. They've got a lot of talent on the team, but I think the coach sets the tone in many respects. Mike doesn't ever get too high or too low. He's very consistent. I think a lot of our coaches are that way. And I think that's the tone generally of the leadership of our department is, look, there are days where we have a lot of success. There's weekends. Even this spring, we've had a ton of success early on. Well, we're only as good as what we just did, right? So now we've got a new week and we've got a new set of competitions coming up. You can't get too high, and if it doesn't go your way, you can't get too low, you just gotta keep it going. And that's Mike's approach, and so I think that has extended to the team, and I think the team embraces that mindset. And so it's really no surprise to me that they've been as successful as they have been, and I think they'll continue to play well as the spring unfolds. Let's see, oh my gosh, all three of you questions, we'll start in the front and go to the back.
Hi, Andy Zelaya. You talked about fundraising, and it says here that you were able to upgrade across, like facility upgrade across 12 different sports. When it comes to fundraising, how do you decide which sports or which things you need to upgrade throughout the entire Ball State campus?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of that depends on the unique circumstances about what we really need, and there's priorities associated with that. So you referenced those different sports. When I first got here, so I've been here just shy of 2 years. We'll hit the 2-year mark in mid-March. We needed a field hockey playing surface that was in pretty bad shape. So we did that right out of the gate, and just from a player experience standpoint going into the following season. We've resurfaced the men's and women's tennis courts. We have, put me on the spot now to remember. What else have we done facility-wise? We've done some upgrades in Worthing. We have a new lower chair back seating, which has impacted multiple sports. The basketballs, the volleyballs, gymnastics. We have done some other upgrades within Worthing, just more from an aesthetic standpoint, some of which the general public doesn't necessarily see, but it's all for student athlete experience, coaching experience for that matter. Oh, goodness. There are a handful of other things I think that we've done. Looking ahead, we're gonna put a new football field down this summer. So it's gotten, these turf fields have a lifespan, and football has exhausted its, and we'll put down a new field to be sharp. We're gonna rebrand the basketball court at the end of this year as well. It'll have a similar looking feel and style to it. We fundraised for the new TerraFlex flooring system for volleyball, men's and women's volleyball. And all these fields and courts are gonna have a similar look and feel as we unveil them. There are a couple other projects in the works right now. To more specifically answer your question though, it's really driven by priority. And where are the needs, and what can we accomplish, and what's the benefit of that particular project? So all those that we've talked about is player experience, really, right? So we want to have a good surface on which to compete and practice. We want the aesthetics of these fields and playing surfaces to look good on TV. That's part of the design element of what we do for football and for basketball. So many eyeballs that are looking at that through a streaming platform, TV, whatever the case may be, right? So that's really important too. So there's a fan experience part of it as well. The other thing that we're working on, which is a big project for which there's been some significant fundraising, is our Championship Performance Center. You'll refer to or hear it in the coming months and in the next year as the Eric Foss Championship Performance Center. Eric Foss is a lead donor who contributed a significant amount of money towards this particular function. This is going to be a new weight room for our student athletes. It'll be situated on the west side of the Shondell Practice Center. Replaces an old 32-year-old space that is non-descriptive. That's all about as good as I can do. There's no windows, there's no natural light. It's just a very unassuming space where our student athletes have been conducting strength and conditioning training. This is gonna be an open, vibrant, glass, 11,000 square foot space where there'll be ample training for our student athletes. So there's a lot of fundraising there that goes into it, but there's also vision behind it. So in order for us to do some things within the arena, in the, what I call the underbelly of the arena, areas that you guys don't see regularly, you've got this space that I've poorly described, but it's a poor space. So it's apt for a poor description. This space is going to be converted into something different. But in order for us to do that, we had to have something built externally so that we can begin to move things around on the inside. So we'll convert this space that will be vacated into a sports medicine area. At least that's the vision for it. Does it come to fruition? Time will tell. But we'll take where our current sports medicine area is, we'll move it into this space, which will alleviate space where our current sports medicine area is. And it's just kind of a domino effect of how we can master plan or remaster plan, as the case may be, the areas within Worthing Arena. Let's go. I think we're going back, and then we'll come back to the front. This row.
Aiden McNally, sophomore. When it comes to football head coaches, there are gurus and then there are high-octane guys. During the hiring process, which quality were you looking for, and which box does Coach Yaramovich check?
I wanted somebody that had coached at multiple levels, that it wasn't a deal breaker if they had not been a head coach, but it was certainly a plus. To me today, if you can coach at, like Coach Yaramovich has at the NAIA level, at a coordinator at the Group of 5 level, so Northern Illinois, when they were really, really good in the mid 2000 teens, was at North Carolina State as a coordinator and position coach. At Temple, if you can have success in those various places, and then of course most recently as head coach at Butler, then you're going to be successful. I don't know, we'll find out what that offense looks like. Coach Yaramovich will be calling plays. He is a proponent of getting your best players the football as often as you can. So I don't know if his offense would necessarily be described as high octane in terms of a lot of passing down the field, but it's going to be a very efficient offense, a very power aligned offense. He believes in being strong up front, and he believes in defending really well, but he's not a defensive guy. I think he's probably more of that guru. He knows the game inside and out, as opposed to a high octane guy. But at the same time, he's going to play to his personnel. So, we'll see what this first year looks like. He inherited some talent. He's gone out and recruited some talent, but it takes time, right? It's not very rarely do you see, these one-hit wonders. I know just down the road, we've experienced it here in the state with Indiana having a great year, although it's arguable as to how good they were, but there's no question that they had a successful season, and that was a first-year head coach. Can you do that? Is there a recipe for that across the board? I don't know that there is. I think a lot of it sometimes is just luck, but luck's a good thing when you put in some time and effort to making a roster as competitive as they can be. But I'm optimistic that we'll be improved and we'll continue to improve under Coach Yaramovich's leadership. Yes, sir.
Ball State has a lot of, Sam Kluge, I'm a freshman. Ball State has a lot of long tenured coaches such as Coach Sallee, Coach Fleck, like you said, and Coach Maloney. How's your relationship with those coaches who've been here a long time coming in as the new guy? You just passed your 2-year anniversary as being the AD.
Yeah, great question. So the relationships, period, are important to me within the athletics department. I think that's incumbent upon the athletic director or senior level administrators in an athletics department to immediately develop a rapport, particularly with those long tenured coaches. I have been a sport administrator for almost the entirety of my career, and so I've learned how to create really positive relationships with our coaches. As an athletic director, I don't think that there are many relationships that are more important than those with your head coaches in particular. And so I spend a lot of time reaching out to them, whether it's engaged in business purposes or whether it's just, say, checking in and offering them a note of encouragement. Just a quick text here or there saying, hey, offering encouragement for anything and everything this day. Have a great day, right? Going around and seeing them. I try to meet with them regularly. Now, the way I organize the department is some of my senior associates and other assistant ADs are what we call sport administrators. So they're having more of the day-to-day conversations with our coaches. I just simply don't have time to do that across 19 different sports. But there are a handful of coaches that I deal with regularly. Coach Removich being one of them, Coach Maloney, and our basketball coaches. Right, there seems to be more issues or more business-related things that come up over the course of a day or a week that require my attention, and so I spend more time with them. But that doesn't mean that the relationships with the other head coaches aren't important. I just have to be more proactive in terms of how I reach out to them and connect with them. I do think I do a good job of that, and we'll continue to make those relationships a priority. Yes, sir.
Greg Godwin, junior at Ball State. How has Ball State adapted to the NIL era since its implications?
Yeah, we're still adjusting. It's so NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. Prior to July 1 of 2021, student athletes, by rule, could not benefit from their name, their image, their likeness. Anybody else in the world could. Right? Just inherently, it's just a basic freedom, not necessarily a right, but a freedom to enjoy the opportunity to benefit financially or otherwise from your name, image, and likeness. But the NCAA had a rule that said that student athletes cannot. That has since changed, which has created some issues because what we've seen now is really a twist on the idea of a basketball student athlete, for example, going and being the face of a local car dealership, maybe having the privilege of driving a vehicle on a courtesy basis, maybe having the opportunity to receive some remuneration, some money from that relationship. And now we've stockpiled money into these enterprises known as collectives, and these student athletes are being paid out of those collectives, right? So it's really more of a pay-for-play model as opposed to the amateurism model, which the NCAA desperately has tried to hold on to for decades. And for decades, the NCAA was successful in establishing, controlling, and maintaining this idea of amateurism. That's not the case anymore. So we've evolved into this new era of intercollegiate athletics where student athletes are receiving some compensation for their participation in athletics over and above what they may receive from a financial aid standpoint. Not every student athlete is on financial aid. Not every student athlete is on a full grant and aid if they are on financial aid. Does that make sense? And not every student athlete is getting paid. So you may think that, you may, the mainstream narrative suggests that there's all these student athletes making all this crazy money. That's really not the case. But to answer the question about what it looks like for us is, we are going to participate in this new era of intercollegiate athletics where we are going to, you hear the words revenue distribution or share revenue. I have a hard time saying that just because of the way our revenue sources line up, but can we create opportunities to provide more benefits to student athletes while also being good stewards of the funds entrusted to us? I think the answer is yes. We'll have to be creative in what that looks like. That doesn't mean it's huge sums of money, but for for some student athletes, for some sports, that will be a new reality. Don't press me on what exactly that looks like today, because I don't know the answer to that question just yet. And we're still waiting to see what an important court case yields in the process of a settlement. So this house, it's called a house case. And if this house case settles like we hope that it will, on and around April the 7th of this year, then some of these new rules are gonna go into effect beginning in July, okay? Yes?
Maria Williams Hawkins, senior faculty member in the Department of Media. I have told this class and others that you are the only person that the president, when giving his own press conference, called his name and things that you've done more than the things that he had accomplished. I wanna know what you look for in a president before you take on a new position.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm especially privileged to work alongside President Jeff Burns. You're taught as athletic directors or aspiring athletic directors, and I know I've talked about relationships with head coaches. If there is one relationship that's more important than that, it's a relationship with your institution's president. It matters from an athletic director's perspective with whom or for whom you work. And so as I was going through this process to be hired here, the search was extraordinary. It was thoughtful. I had the ability to really dig in and do some research to understand Ball State, even though I'd never been to campus before this process. I'd never lived in the Midwest before. And, but I gravitated towards the leadership of President Burns. Now, it doesn't hurt for any of the ADs that have been here under his, or during his tenure, that President Burns is a former Division I college athlete himself, that he is a non-traditional president in the sense that he had a career outside of higher education before getting into higher education. So there's a perspective that he possesses that's unique. But he cares about education, and he cares about developing leadership qualities in students, and he cares about what students do post their college experience. So he wants to put in place these opportunities for students to learn and develop, for student success, so that we can create what I call leaders and winners every day. And so our philosophies, our values align. So as I was going through the process and getting to know him and him getting to know me, I was looking for someone that was compassionate about the development of others, which is interesting because we're not, we're in a time and a space in higher education where we really do need to learn and grow from our mistakes, okay? Those are great teaching moments. He's passionate about student success, which means there's gonna be some failure. He's passionate about the development of the person holistically, which is a passion of mine as well. And he's very thoughtful in his approach to leadership. He's very vision-oriented in what he wants to do for this campus. And so for me to come in and have the opportunity to be a member of his cabinet, to begin to dream and outline what I think can be accomplished here within athletics, but more broadly for the institution, the more excited I got. Quite frankly, the more excited I am every day about some of the things that we're doing and how anything that the institution does publicly, certainly within the community of Muncie and Central Indiana, but anything we can project on a national level benefits athletics. And anything that we do from an athletic standpoint that creates reputation or prestige, not only locally and regionally, but nationally as well, benefits Ball State University. So it's a unique relationship. And our relationship that the president and I have is unique in that way. We're very much collaborators, very much partners in growing the Ball State brand. And look, at the end of the day, he's my boss, right? But there is a unique partnership that exists. And quite frankly, it's no different than the relationship that I have with those coaches. It's a partnership. Yes, I'm their boss, but we don't go around, flying that boss flag, right? We're partners and collaborators in advancing Ball State athletics, Ball State University. Thank you. Yes. No, I'm sorry. Not for you. My man, right? You're next.
Eli Edwards, freshman. I was wondering, was us blowing a 14-point lead in the last 5 minutes of the Buffalo game the final nail in Coach Lee's coffin, or had the decision already been made?
Yeah, great question. Let me answer it this way. There were no particular outcome necessarily put a nail in a coffin, and I don't even want to use that expression. These changes are really difficult, especially for somebody that has been around the Ball State purpose as long as Coach you have, from a player standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. A very, very difficult set of circumstances. In the Division I world, results matter, okay? So let me answer it that way. Results matter, and you go from 7 wins to 6 wins to 5 wins to 4 wins to 3 wins. That is a trajectory that is the opposite of results. So I don't think that it helped the situation, but it wasn't anything that drove a final decision. I think these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. It's not just one person. There's a lot of conversations that are had. It's very complex, and I think we got to a point where we weren't looking at bowl eligibility, and it happened to coincide with that game, and a decision was made to change direction in the program. Yes.
PC Alexander, freshman. You spoke recently at a booster event for the basketball team on NIU's departure from the MAC football. As an AD, do you think this will affect any other MAC affiliated sports that NIU still has, and how does this affect the rivalry between Ball State and NIU?
Yeah, so Northern Illinois has accepted an invitation to join the Mountain West as a football-only member. Theoretically, they are still members of the MAC and other sports, but that watchword is theoretically. They will not be. Okay, we will. Our ADs are aligned in our room. The commissioners aligned. In fact, it's really a rule that if you're not a member of a required sport, which football is, then you're not a member, period. There's a transition period. So Northern Illinois will be a member of the MAC through the 25-26 academic year, including football. But July 1st of 26, as we go into that 26-27 academic and athletic calendar, Northern Illinois is not going to be a member of the MAC. I don't know what they're going to do with those other sports. That's not the Mid-American Conference's issue. It's not Ball State's issue. That's a Northern Illinois issue. So they'll have to find somewhere, or they'll be independent in those sports, which will be a scheduling nightmare for those coaches. Now, it's possible that a handful of sports, men's tennis immediately comes to mind, where we may accept them as an affiliate member because we're thin in terms of what the league composition looks like in some of those sports. So we would continue to enjoy men's tennis from Northern Illinois as an affiliate member. This is pure speculative, so there's no news about that. I'm not breaking anything. It's just me thinking out loud. But that's a possibility. But for the other sports, particularly when you talk about basketball, they're going to have to find somewhere else. So that's a decision that institution made to accept an invitation from the Mountain West, which was only an invitation for football, okay? So it's just a football-only invitation. And it's pretty disruptive when there's no contemplation of what the remaining sports sponsorship is for that institution and where they might fall. Ideally, they'd love to stay a part of the Mid-American Conference, but if we allow that, then we're opening up the door, or any conference for that matter, to allow such a move. You're opening up the door for mass changes relative to sports, and it's just not healthy for the enterprise. And it's not being contemplated by the MAC. I can guarantee that. Let's go here.
Josh Gabbard, I had the chance to speak with Anthony Winchester, who spent some time with you at Southern Miss during your tenure. He spoke about your drive to do more. What is it about Ball State that motivates you and drives you to do more for this institution?
Great question. I'm a big fan of Coach Winchester, who's at Kansas State now, on the basketball staff. I think my drive is to I always want to be a part of a team. And I'm never forums shopping. It's a legal term, but what I mean by that is I'm not looking for the what's next deal. I'm looking for opportunities where I can contribute to a community or an institution, an organization that needs someone with my skill set, which is building teams and developing programs, making organizations better. And so that drive to do more is just to be a meaningful contributor to the team that I'm on. And I'm a former student athlete, former coach. I wasn't a great student athlete or a great player by any stretch of the imagination, but I wanted to be a value add to my team. Okay? And so that continues in everything that I do. Like coming in to visit with you guys, if I'm not a value add to you, then you need to give that feedback to your professor so she won't extend another invitation to me, right? But if I am a value add, then I hope that I am invited back, because for me, this is very important to the persona of an athletic director who needs to be an educator. Okay, I believe firmly in that, right? And so for me to come and give more, that's important to me. And so what you see today is not a performance. This is how I am every day. I try to show up authentically and genuinely, because that's where our teams enjoy the most success or the most growth and development if we all show up in an authentic way. So that giving more mantra is just a part of who I am, that value add. So I think that in the almost 2 years now that I've been at Ball State, there's been significant value add that I've brought the department into the university. Yes, ma'am.
Vivian Bostic, freshman. So you talked about being a member of President Mern's cabinet. Expanding from that, what about your office and the city's relationship with the university as an institution?
Repeat the last part of that question about the offices, what?
The mayor's offices and the city of Muncie's relationship with the university.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a great relationship with the city, certainly with the president. There's opportunities to collaborate. You know, for example, and this is not an athletics function, but we will have benefits of the success of the Village project. So when you put in a hotel right on campus, when you build a performing arts theater that's going to attract people to East Central Indiana, people to Muncie, people to Ball State's campus, more opportunity to cross-promote, to celebrate not only the institution, but athletics as well. And certainly the talent that our students have across all disciplines. So I think that's one key area where we have to show up and be a collaborator, even if it's not a specific athletics project. I think we have opportunities that athletics is kind of a front porch to the university, that we engage with the city in certain ways, that we engaged with the mayor, so I don't necessarily have a ton of meetings with him, but I see him from time to time at public events, and there's not necessarily an obligation, but there is a strong benefit for me to go say hi to him, because he knows who I am, I know who he is, and there's an opportunity to work together and partner, because I do believe that a strong Ball State helps to benefit Muncie and make it stronger. And that includes athletics. It's just we have a lot of visitors that come to our city, come to our region, because they're coming to Ball State athletics events. Let's go here.
Jennifer Thomas, I'm a freshman. So the men's volleyball team is having a very good season. Could you kind of talk about how that has kind of like been shaped and how like in the future you think the program will be?
Yeah, this is again a testament to one of our head coaches, so Doman Cruz is in his fourth season as our men's volleyball head coach. Bless him, he's won 3 championships in his first 3 years, so that standard is pretty high. So there's a lot of pressure on him to go into to win a 4th consecutive championship. But he's very culture based. In other words, he creates a really vibrant culture within that program, and that is attractive to student athletes who come in and want to play for him. They're very talented. They're very authentic in terms of how they show up and work with each other on a daily basis. They're very competitive. They like to win, and Coach Cruz is the exact same way. So they embody what he is creating. They're fun to watch. They've had a lot of success early on. They actually got tripped up on Friday in a conference match, which is, we're not going to go undefeated, but it was a game probably we should have won. We've got some injuries right now, and so there's a kind of a recalibration of how they're going to go going forward while dealing with a couple of these injuries. But they've been through this before, and Coach Cruz has reminded them of that, and they're just as talented this year as they have been in the previous years, if not more so. So it's kind of I shot him a note of encouragement after the loss, and just saying punch back. It's a long season, and he said, we will adjust to the next man up opportunity, right? So if you got a player go down, it'll be fine. It's going to be a couple of weeks, but that provides an opportunity for somebody else who may not receive as much playing time. But if the players, student athletes, are prepared to be next when their name is called, then you have a chance of progression. And I think that's kind of a classic leadership principle that Coach Cruz fosters and creates for his team. So I'm really proud that he's our head coach and excited about the remainder of our season. Who has not asked a question out of the board, guys? What is, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. 4. Well, that was it. Go ahead.
Aiden McNally, over the past offseason, Brady Sallee agreed to an extension that runs through 2030. With how successful that team has been, being undefeated in conference play, what is it like to see your signees product be so successful in the basketball court and meet your expectations?
Yeah. There's some decisions that are pretty easy, and there's some that are difficult. That's a pretty easy one. He's been super successful here. He's great to work with. I enjoy the relationship that I have with Coach Sallee. He's a great basketball coach, and the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years now, he's just continued to improve. Or not he per se, but the team has, and I think that the future continues to be bright for that program. I think you're going to start seeing women's college basketball become more and more prevalent in terms of being highlighted as a sport that is fan-friendly and exciting. We're certainly contributing to that with the style of play that we have. And I think Coach Sallee has been a great proponent for the game of women's basketball generally, and not just for his team. So great ambassador for the game of college women's basketball, and to have him, hopefully finish his career as a Cardinal was important to me, certainly was important to him, and it just seemed like a really a no-brainer to continue to engage with him in that way, take some pressure off of him and off of me as we continue to grow and build, to know that he's kind of locked our foot for a long term, and as we approach that 2030 time frame, who knows what college athletics looks like, or what he wants to do as a career. It's taxing. It's a taxing job to be a head coach. So there's, and you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you don't have kind of the freedom to make decisions. He may not make it. He may not want to do it anymore. He might extend it again. Who knows? But he enjoys his position right now. I think he does a superb job at it, and to have peace of mind, because many of us work in that under a contract. It's helpful to just have some peace of mind when you go to work every day. You haven't asked a question yet.
So my name's Abby Urban. I'm a sophomore here. So obviously you mentioned you've had many different roles in college sports, and you've even been a part of many different conferences within it.
Yeah.
What has that journey been like, especially with the ever-changing landscape that is college sports?
It's been one of privilege. I've really enjoyed my journey. I never thought that I would have ended up on the West Coast, being a native Mississippian. I realize we hadn't talked about my background. I can allude to a little bit in this question, or this answer to your question. But to go, having gone to school and been educated in the state of Mississippi, to experiencing the bulk of my career, even to date, in California, in the Bay Area, at Santa Clara, to then return home to Mississippi, to work in an institution that is probably in the shadow of some of its sister institutions in the state, and to contribute and to help it, and then to be called to the opportunity to be at Ball State. It's just it's a dream, really. I've never scripted it. I've never been a fan of my colleagues that, let me backtrack. This has nothing to do with my opinions of them. It's just the attitudes of wanting to go to a place for a couple years and try to check some boxes and try to get something bigger and move on in terms of advancement. I've really wanted to relish where I have been. So the idea of grow where you're planted is really impactful to me. So at the various places where I've been, whether it's undergrad and grad school, my first job in life at Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi, to law school at Ole Miss, to Santa Clara University, my nearly 13 years there, about 4.5 years at Southern Miss, and now almost 2 years at Ball State. I have grown where I've been planted. Now, inevitably, there's been some uprooting, right, that has happened when you move. But if you can focus on what you're doing now, things in the future will take care of themselves.
Rowan Elbert. So you're on Twitter, you're on social media, and with any kind of hiring process, I'm sure you get flooded with messages and tweets saying, hire this guy, fire this guy. How do you react to that?
Yeah. So the great news about positions like mine is you get a lot of free advice. Whether that comes through social media or whether it comes to just engaging with individuals at a donor function. So for example, this past Saturday, we had a donor event prior to our men's basketball game, and I went from table to table just saying hi to people. And I don't know what was in the water that particular day, but I got a lot of free advice. A lot of free advice. And what I've been trained to do, what I've seen other leaders in our space, people that I admire, do when they're faced with these types of exchanges and this free advice, particularly on social media, is you have to be quick to not react, right? So it's not people making comments on social media is not an invitation to engage necessarily, okay? People making comments in person saying, well, what about this, or why is this, or the music's too loud, or whatever, is you just thank them for the feedback, you ask them questions, you're thoughtful, you're authentic, you don't want to dismiss their concerns, but you also try to help them understand through some questioning of why perhaps it's important to have a lively atmosphere at a college basketball game as opposed to playing music that is more akin to elevator music, right? It's just not very becoming. So those interactions can be detrimental if you don't handle them the right way. Sometimes you can interject humor into the equation to just kind of alleviate some of the pressure. Sometimes the best response is just no response, and nobody's going to fault you for it. Particularly at an institution that's public, where anything that I email or that I put out, I guess if I put something out, it's public anyway. But if any emails that I send, or it's open for discovery. So you just have to be careful about the narratives that you put out. So I'm very thoughtful that I've been exposed to some times where less is more, and I've learned a lot from that. And so I kind of have that mentality when I engage with the public. But when it's time to say something impactful, sorry guys, when it's time to say something impactful, you have to be crisp in your messaging. Yes.
Grant
Here
Johnson
in the
Jr.
back.
Me?
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
What defines success for Ball State athletic programs besides from the wins and losses?
Yeah, great question. Incremental progress is the answer. That is not a glamorous answer, but for me, it kind of goes back to the previous question about just wanting to do more. If we can make progress, then that is success. And it can be small things, whether it's resurfacing a floor, or whether it is hiring people that help our student athletes' success academically, or whether it is hiring people that can have a different approach to how we manage a budget in this new era of intercollegiate athletics, whether we hire a coach that has a different style of leadership. We've made significant improvements, just goes back to the hiring of Coach Grimovich. We made significant improvements in our football program, although the wins and losses have been neutral since it's hire, right? We haven't played a game, so we haven't won a game, we haven't lost a game, but our program is better, in my opinion, than it was, and that's not a knock on a previous coach. It's just a different time, right? And so our student athletes are doing things differently, they're training differently, there's a different attitude around it, and that's often not unusual in coaching transitions, but sometimes those decisions are made to do that. And so I think that all the decisions that I make every day, if I can center those decisions around a framework of what's in the best interest of our student athletes and those that impact them on a daily basis, then we're making incremental progress if we implement those decisions in a meaningful way. Yes.
Sam Klug, I'm a freshman. I want to ask about burnout and engaging with people on a daily basis. As students, we can experience that a lot. A, do you ever experience burnout or having to talk to people every day? Obviously, you seem like an introvert, so maybe it comes naturally. And B, is there any piece of advice you can give us for those moments where we might not want to talk to people if we have to?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the biggest lessons that we can learn as people, as leaders, is to know ourselves well. The more you know yourself, the more impactful you can be toward others. For me, I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy motivating them, I enjoy encouraging them, I enjoy listening to them, I enjoy being helpful, okay? My core values actually are positivity, communication, helpfulness, and a growth mindset. So I try to show up that way every day. But that is an example of me knowing myself well. But there are times where I get tired. This is, the question couldn't be better, because we just had a weekend that, from Christmas to the middle of February, our calendar was slammed. I had just come off a coaching search too, so I had a little break at Christmas, caught my breath, and then wham, we hit January, and it's like every night we have something. And I try to be the AD that shows up, okay? But I also prioritize my family. I have a junior in high school, I have a sixth grader in middle school, and a working spouse. And, I show up for them too, that's a priority for me. But you do those things and you still wanna show up to go watch volleyball or gymnastics, the basketballs, get to a point where you just get tired. And so this weekend, it hit me. And I remember sitting Friday night at our volleyball match, and I know we were playing, and I was with my wife and my son. I know we were playing, but I had no idea. I caught myself, I have no idea what set it is. I have no idea what time it is. So I kind of looked at my wife, and she was like, I think we need to go. And I'm like, that's a great call. So we just loaded up and left. Now, I have staff that are on call that are running that particular game. So for me to come and go is part of it. But yeah, I took a nap yesterday, which doesn't happen very often. I got some good rest on Friday night, Saturday night, and even last night too with that nap. So I knew that I had to reset a little bit, and for me, that's rest. And I'm unapologetic about it. I need sleep for me to function at a high level. That was something that I needed this weekend to recharge. But sometimes you just have to have quiet time, and I block off certain times of my day. Certainly at least 2 to 3 times a week where I don't have meetings, so that I can either do work that I need to do, or it's used as emergency time in case something does pop up. But for the most part, it's just me to reset even during the course of the day, because I have so many things coming to me on a daily basis, and that's taxing. That mental exhaustion of interacting with people, of trying to solve problems, of dealing with things that happen. This is an organization that has 19 sports. It's got 130 employees and graduate assistants. We've got 450 student athletes. Those numbers add up, right? That's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of human beings with a diverse set of needs and experiences that impact the work that I do. So I have to know myself and lead well based on how well I know myself. Does that make sense? It's a great question. Yes.
Hello, Alexia Bird, sophomore. I was wondering, what would you say is the most challenging part of your job?
These are hard-hitting questions.
You might have already touched on it.
No, I haven't. I think a lack of clarity right now in our enterprise is challenging. I don't have a lot of answers. I think that dealing with the changing expectations of maybe even some of our student athletes about what they want from their experience, and maybe not as readily having the forum for them to express that to me. It can be a challenge. Changes in leadership from the standpoint of, we're going through a women's soccer head coach change right now with our previous coach accepting another position elsewhere. Those are always challenging, particularly when they don't fall in cycle. This is what would be known as an off-cycle search, because the women's soccer season ended in November. It's February. Usually those changes happen shortly after the season. So of those are challenges, just some of the unexpected things that pop up are challenging. You're trained for that, but there's still, nobody has produced a roadmap or a manual for being a Division I FBS athletics director, probably a president too, for that matter. When somebody writes that, that person will be really, really influential and rich, because we pay a lot of money to get that manual. I try to approach, despite the fact that I have those challenges, I try to approach every day with a clear head and be curious and not judgmental. That's a Ted Lasso quote, for those of you that have seen that episode. But I was being curious before Ted Lasso made it famous. I think that's really important too, by the way, guys, is to be open, to listen to different perspective, and not be quick to make a decision unless you have to, like it's a life or death deal. You need to absorb and have thoughtful conversation around it. I don't feel like I did a really good job answering your question, but.
It's a tough question, that's okay.
All right. Let's go back and go you, then back over here.
Good one, Bud. When we have big time players come to Ball State and transfer somewhere else, like Bashir Jihad a couple years ago, Caden Zamanza entered the transfer portal, Josh Reif just left for IU, I believe. How do you handle that and move on with it each day?
I handle it well, and I move on quickly. There's no, I can't, I'm not gonna necessarily be able to impact those decisions, but I have to adjust to them, okay? Those players that you mentioned, they're making decisions that they believe are in their best interests. It is my hope that they've had a great Ball State experience when they're here. Coaching changes happen, that probably impacted Kate. On the football side, Bashir, I think, left for money, quite frankly, and good for him. Coach Reif leaving to go to Indiana. Indiana's his alma mater. He was a part of a highly successful men's program as a player when he was there. I just extended him, I guess, a year ago to a longer-term contract here. That's probably the only job he was going to leave for, and it happened to open. I have a great relationship with Coach Reif. I'm proud of him. I have no ill will towards him at all. If anything, I'm extraordinarily happy for him and his family. It'll put them in a different situation in terms of finances and an opportunity. I hope he's successful there. But nevertheless, I'm grateful for his contributions here. But athletics is a very transitory enterprise, so people come and go. And I learned early in my career, particularly at Santa Clara, as I just watched people come through, and I was there for so long. You don't necessarily get used to it, but you understand that it's part of the enterprise, it's part of the business. And if you allow yourselves to create those meaningful relationships, like Anthony Winchester, for example. Well, I can't remember now if I left before Anthony left or if Anthony left and then I left at Southern Miss, but we connected while we were there, right? And if we're referencing each other today, that's a pretty cool deal, and it means that those relationships are important. So the fact that I've got connections all across the country is a result of having worked at different institutions and those people working at those institutions where I worked, and then we've gone on to other places. So it's just part of it. But I move on and then go find the next person to be in that head coach role, or our coaches move on and go and recruit new talented student athletes to come in. There are plenty of them out there. There's plenty of great women's soccer coaches. I'm excited about what the future of our program will look like when we name our new head coach. But it's just part of it. Yes. Okay.
Rowan Elbert. And I did want to touch on the head coaching search for a women's soccer coach. And as of right now, like you mentioned, it's a really weird timing to find a new head coach. How do you handle that when a lot of big names that maybe you would have looked at in November are off the board?
Yeah, great question. The good news is we've got a ton of interest already, and yes, the process has started, but not in any earnest way. It'll really kind of get kick-started when I leave here this morning. We've had a lot of interest. We've got anywhere from assistant coaches to associate head coaches, even at the quote-unquote Power 4 level, to sitting head coaches. So there's no shortage of interest. That's a good thing. I will approach it very similarly to the way that I approached the head football coach search. I want it to be thoughtful. I want it to be thorough. I don't feel pressed for time, although we are in the middle of the spring season, so our team is a little anxious right now. I recognize that, so I've twice met with them in the past week to kind of outline what this process looks like. I've tried to explain to them that it's fluid. I've also explained to them that I will include them in the process to some extent, although even that is a little bit fluid. I owe them an update this Friday about where we are in the search, and so I got to make some progress this week, and to be accountable to them. Not that I have to be, but I want them to know that this is an important part of the job and an important hire for me. So I will give them an update on Friday. I'll look through the same windows, the competence, the connectedness, the competitiveness that I looked through when I hired Coach Shermovich. The cycle is a little bit different because there is some urgency to getting somebody here sooner rather than later, because I've got things arranged for our team for this week and next week, and then it's spring break, and then they come back and they need to have a head coach. So there's, to that extent, there is a time quotient on the search. But if I don't find a qualified candidate during that time frame, I'm not going to panic. But I think I will be in good shape.
Is there anyone who has not asked a question who wants to take this time? Because last time he was ready to kick us out. We just kept asking questions. So now we have to make sure he gets out on time. So if you have not asked a question, this is your opportunity.
Yes.
How has your past experience as a student athlete shaped how you interact with current players?
Great question. I love my experience as a student athlete. I played college baseball at Millsaps College. I think that experience as a student athlete, the experience as a coach, the experience as an administrator at various places now, certainly on the administrative side at various places, allow me to have the ability to talk to different people. And I understand that being a student athlete is challenging. It's taxing on your time. It's taxing on your body. It's taxing on your mental state. And so to have that shared experience, I think, is important as I sit down with student athletes. To be fair, it is harder and harder for me in my role to spend a ton of time with our student athletes. I try to make time to go to practice and watch them, certainly at competitions, but the interaction period, as I've grown in the profession and certainly in different positions, I see myself further removed from, to me, what continues to be the central part of why I do what I do, which is a little ironic, but it's just kind of part of it. So I have to be intentional about engaging with them. But that experience as a student athlete helps that. When we do have those opportunities, I can look at a student athlete in the eye and say, look, I get it. I've been in your shoes. And can experience those highs and those lows, and then offer encouragement to them to just stay steady, keep going.
We can show our appreciation. And those of you who can stay a couple of minutes after you leave, I'm going to just share a couple of things.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, sir.
Got it. Y'all too.
Is that